All right. So the other article in the August issue of Body by Science was titled "Are Full Body Resistance Training Workouts Superior for Fat Loss?" And that was based on an actual article which was called "Full Body Resistance Training Promotes Greater Fat Mass Loss Than a Split Body Routine in Well-Trained Males," a randomized trial by Carneiro et al. Just of this year. I liked that Bill really emphasized at the beginning that resistance training is not a fat loss tool per se. Yes, we burn like a little bit of calories during this, but we shouldn't be using it as a fat loss tool in the sense of, oh, we want to add to calorie expenditure. It's a tool to maintain or build muscle mass as one is dieting. Neglecting this often leads to body fat overshoot once a diet ends. So it's essentially, if we're not resistance training while we're dieting, and then at the end, we're just a smaller version of ourselves with less muscle mass, with less muscle mass, and therefore we're adding more fat cells, etc., in the process, and gaining more weight back later on. So essentially worsening our initial condition. Everything about a fat loss phase is catabolic, meaning building down essentially, or wants to get rid of muscle mass. We want to keep some anabolic stimuli to counter the loss of muscle, and therefore we emphasize protein consumption and resistance training. He also stated that prior research had shown that body part splits and full body training is equally efficient for hypertrophy if the volume is equated. But what about muscle soreness and fatigue, and how is that affecting our fat loss, for example, by making us too tired to do our cardio on other days? Sometimes people say that a split body training is said to cause less muscle soreness. I just wanted to interject here already that personally for me, that has not been the experience. Mostly though, because I always train 5 days of the week. I do think if someone trains 3 or even 4 days of the week, a full body split is not just perfectly fine, but might even be the better option. But for instance, with like CrossFit training or circuit training in general, like 5 or 6 times per week, more or less training all body parts, I have found that I just love giving certain body parts at least 48 hours rest before I hit them again. Yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys at this point already. Well, what sort of, if you've tried full body splits, if you prefer full body splits, if you, or what kind of split you're following at the moment.
I follow a split, but actually this research review came at good timing because I was considering moving to, just like because of life, other things in life, and trying to make, training fit my life instead of be my entire life. I've kind of been considering a full body split. So this was really good timing for me.
Perfect. And have you done a full body split before in the past?
Years, probably when I, just when I was first starting out years and years ago, but I mean, there wasn't a good periodization to it by any means. It was just me getting into the gym and
and how many days a week are you planning to train still?
I am thinking 3 to 4, possibly.
Yeah, great. No, that sounds great, I think, personally. Yeah, what about the rest of you guys?
I actually did the 3 body full day training to change from an upper body lower body split because of the fact that I had so much on my plate. And so it was way better on my central nervous system. Now I did 3 days a week, not 4 or 5. So I didn't actually feel the muscle fatigue that you felt, Lisa, but it was a lot better on my mental fatigue. Central nervous system was actually a lot better. And so I was actually looking forward to my workouts again, instead of, oh my gosh, this is another thing I need to get off my plate. And the lower body stuff at the time, because my plate was so full, was actually exerting more on my central nervous system. So it was a good reprieve. But I did go back to the upper lower body split And then now with, unfortunately, still a demanding new job, there are days where I find myself still doing upper lower body. And then if I know for a fact I can't get the last two in, I'll condense it and make it a third day of full body to make sure both muscle groups are hit twice a week. So I do like a hybrid just to accommodate a busy work schedule and a central nervous system that can be very loaded most of the time.
Yep.
I like it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
I have kind of a hybrid split right now. So I do one lower body day, one upper body push day, one upper body pull day, and then there's a full day, full body day in there also, and then a conditioning day. So I like that because I don't like necessarily a body part split. I get like, oh my God, enough with the legs already if I'm doing a full lower body day, or enough with the arms already. When it's just dedicated to that part of the body, it gets to be a little much. But I also don't like 3 days of full body or more days of full body. The study I thought was kind of interesting how I don't know anyone that would do a full body split and train 5 or 6 days a week, whatever it was in here. It seemed a little crazy to me. But yeah, I like the balance of the split that I have now. It works really well for me, and I have some flexibility in how I can move my week around and that kind of thing. So
Awesome. Well, it's nice to auto-regulate, especially as we're more advanced trainees. I think if we're, if a beginner is just like, oh, I'm going to mess around with my program and do that more intuitively, I think it's always a little bit dangerous. But for people like us that have been training for a while, it certainly deems well, I think.
yeah, I agree.
Same as you, Lisa. I like to train 5 days a week. I've done several different splits. I've done upper lower, I've done upper lower, and then full body. I kind of like that hybrid full body. I like to include more legs as much as I can, but if I find that I'm too fatigued, I can just do, some legs, like a full dedicated leg day, and then some legs on 2 other days, so I don't get too fatigued.
Awesome. Cool. And what about you, Mike?
Mine is a 6 days a week, upper lower times 3. And then my last session, which is supposed to be a lower body, has organically turned into a whole body split because I basically do arms, delts, and chest along with legs on that day. So
nice. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds like a pretty good split.
It's awesome. And I personally, I never get sore. So yeah, it's just one of those weird things.
Smart programming, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Melissa, are you following a program at the moment?
I started this week again. So I am doing again the program that Natalie gave me back in January because I still have it. She has 5 days of training and 1 day of cardio, which is not something that I can manage. So I started this week and I just choose one of the upper body sessions and one lower body sessions, and I accommodated what I could do because I just don't want to hurt myself. That's my main priority. And since I haven't been in the gym, in the real gym since March, I decided to do 2 sessions this week, 2 sessions next week, and then if it goes well, then I can go for 3 because I'd rather be slow than had to stop again. But I do prefer doing full body splits. It's just that it's not very common when you do one of these programs that is not made for you, but you just have to select. If you say you are intermediate or advanced, you're automatically dropped into a box where it has to be upper body split. There are no intermediate or advanced programs that I have found that are full body. And I am sorry about that because I rather do full body programs. Gotcha. I have the feeling when I'm doing upper body that after the 2nd or 3rd exercise, my upper body is just exhausted and I do not want to do more. I want to do something with my legs, which are doing nothing. Same the other way. It's like, I don't know, you start with a squat and you have split was, then you have something else with your legs. I'm like, can we do something with the arms, please? I don't want to destroy my legs anymore. So no, I don't enjoy upper body, but this is what I have at the moment. And because the intensity is not so high, it's okay. I just want to go back to the gym. That's it.
Awesome, cool. And Julia, are you just listening in, or are you talking also? Assume just listening. Okay, cool. Well, we'll just carry on. So in this study, half of the subjects were randomized to a full body workout routine, and the other half were randomized to a split body routine. Regardless of what workout program they were assigned to, they all completed the same number of sets, so 75 total sets, and exercises, so 10 total exercises at the end of the week, over 10 weeks. All sets were completed with 8 to 12 rep max, meaning at the weights used allowed that the weights used allowed the subjects to complete at least 8 repetitions, but no more than 12 repetitions per set. As the subjects got stronger, if they were able to do more than 12 reps, the loads were adjusted accordingly to keep all sets to no more than 12 reps. Also, 1.5 minutes of rest were implemented between each set and exercise. So yeah, that's kind of the split that they had. And I personally wonder, and maybe that was in the study, but I don't remember exactly, like in terms of duration, I would feel like the full body would take way longer just because you jump around so much. And I mean, in practicality, this is just my thought, but in practicality, for many exercises, you want to do kind of a build-up set or several, like let's just say back squat or like, yeah, I don't know, for most exercises, I like to do at least 1 or 2 warm-up sets beforehand, if not more. So if you do that with like, how many, 7 different exercises, 9 different exercises or whatever, every single day, for me, that would take way longer. Again, obviously from what we have already just talked about in the last few minutes, is very clear we all function so differently, which is great, as we know. Because I mean, I love just training lower body one day or just upper body, mostly because I have now learned to connect better with my muscles to that muscle group. I have found that with training full body, like with CrossFit, and I mean, that's unfair to say because I never did full CrossFit with the intention of connecting to my muscles better. But I was unable to actually activate certain body parts. So for me, it's often that I get to the 3rd exercise of upper day or lower day or whatever, and finally I'm like, oh, I can feel that muscle now. Yay. I would have never gotten to that point though if I would just jump around and do all the varying body parts. Again, that's me, and clearly, like Melissa just said, she gets bored, or Allison also said she gets bored very easily. But that was just like my personal takeaway, and I'm curious. I
think you're very hardcore. So when you say I begin to feel this body part, I will say my body part is killing me. I want to stop it.
Well, but I mean, that's kind of what we want to lean into, right? Like you want
no.
Yeah, that's sort of the concept of progressive overload, though, in my opinion, anyway. If you don't lean into the discomfort, you're never gonna push the comfort zone. And that's me, anyways. But yeah, I would be curious how long they actually took for each one of those things. Maybe it was mentioned later. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, that's what the set, like 1 set of triceps extensions, like that's dumb. Who would do that in a practical scenario? I mean, if you're already at it, why don't you do 3 at minimum? I think that's kind of what annoyed me about this setup. Like, who does that? But anyway.
I think adding on to what you said about practicality, like you're adding extra volume because of those warm-up sets that you're doing, and you're warming up all the same muscles day after day. And I don't know anybody that's going to go, I'm going to do a full body split 5 days in a row. Like that seems like insanity. And adding to that, I think the one thing they failed to control for is the frequency of the stimulation of the muscles. So like it made me think of the MAPS anabolic program where you're only doing so many workouts, but in the in-between days, you're doing light band work to activate those muscles and remind them, hey, we're using you, just sort of get that activation and stimulus. And I think that some of that could account for the benefits of the program, those extra warm-up sets that you're talking about, and then the frequency of the activation of every single stinking muscle every stinking day is a lot more, there's a lot going on there. So I think that's something that they missed controlling for.
That's a really great point, Allison. I like that. And I mean, studies even show that, you know, if you train only one leg, the other is still getting a benefit from it. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about here also. And yeah, to your point of boredom, like if I were, because it looks like they're doing exactly the same exercises every single day in the full body split, that just sounds mind-numbingly boring. I don't think, and it would be like from a program design perspective, it would be very difficult to find 5 different exercises that only target the quads, or 5 different exercises that only target the back, right? So, I mean, practically speaking, I think that is part of why we mostly just find 3 or 4 day full body splits, and for the most part. But I mean,
I
yeah,
want to say
again,
something.
yeah, please.
Just in defense of the researchers, remember that they have to equal the volume, so they had to make a program that might seem extremely
Of
dumb
course, of
because
course.
they really just, so it is dumb because you normally wouldn't put one set of triceps, but it was just because they needed it equally. But of
Yeah,
course
of
you can
course.
design a program where you have 2 full body days that are the same, like you can have 2 types of full body programs, and you do day 1, day 2, day 1, day 2,
Of course. Yes,
and
yes, yes.
that can be done. That I have had, for example. So it's not the same, and also you don't have to do pure chest. You could do chest with biceps, for example.
No,
So
of course I'm well aware of that, but still it sounds like in terms of being able to replicate it, or adherence, I think that's still some good points, because there are probably some full body splits that are reasonably repetitive. I mean, Mike, you obviously said that you don't get bored of your program, and it is 2 times
it's two times,
3
yeah.
the
But for
same
example,
thing. Sorry.
think on the people.
Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
I just
Yeah,
wanted to hear
yeah,
from
just finish. Sorry.
Mike. Is that correct?
Sorry, what was the question?
Is your program is essentially just 2 days and you're repeating it 3 times more or less? Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. Obviously different exercises and stuff on those days, but yeah, it's pretty much, yeah, upper lower repeated 3 times throughout the week.
I mean, that's awesome that you are able to get into it with your mindset nonetheless every single time, and like pushing yourself. So not experience, like, I think it's so interesting how we're all so different, right? Because like Allison's like, oh, I love the variety and so on, and some of us thrive more on the consistency part, or yeah, I find it super interesting.
Mm.
I think
you
it
know what
changes with your phase of life too.
Possibly. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, it's a little bit of a tangent, but I was re-listening to James Clear's Atomic Habits book, and he said that the key to mastery is being okay with boredom, because when you're learning something, there is that novelty, and we love that novelty. But after a while, it gets boring, and then we're always seeking for that next thing. And so he said, to truly master something or master a habit, you have to be good at being okay with being bored. And I just thought that was really, really interesting. But we're all different, like you said. There's a degree of variety and stuff like that. But yeah, just wanted to.
It's still a great reminder, though, because I think we can all practice sitting with a little bit of boredom, discomfort more often.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Boredom sometimes also can disconnect us from our mind muscle connection, though. And that's what I struggle with is, this is routine. I have muscle memory. I'll just go through the motions. And so repeating things ad nauseum starts to get to that starts to get to me too. And I kind of lose the benefit of what I'm doing if I'm repeating it so much that I can check out while I'm doing it.
Right. That also makes
But
sense.
are we talking about boredom, or are we talking about the exercise being stale? Because I think an exercise can be stale and that can affect mind muscle connection. I would then argue, are you pushing yourself hard enough? Like those would be two thoughts in my
like
head
it.
that would, because you could, because if you're not making progress on an exercise and you've been doing that exercise for a very long time, like say 6 months or so, we could definitely argue that there might be a degree of staleness to the exercise potentially, and that an exercise substitution could be in order. Absolutely on board with that, but I wouldn't say that's boredom. I would say that's probably something different. Likewise, I would say if you don't feel like you're connecting and you feel like it's hard, I would say, are you really pushing yourself on that to keep you engaged with what you're doing? So yeah, and I'm not arguing at all, but I'm just saying that in my head, I would want to make that distinguish, that kind of differentiation before classing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. If
I-
you're working hard enough, you can't check out.
Well,
100%.
that, or even just if you're like present enough. Because I mean, I have found myself often like thinking, oh, this is boring, but it in reality was more like me already thinking about what I need to do over the rest of the day, and hence why I wasn't fully being present. So, no, I think it's super interesting. I like your reminders, Mike. Very, very good. Okay, cool. So these subjects were instructed to maintain their normal dietary habits during the eight-week study. Dietary records were completed for the first 3 days at 3 time points. So the week before the resistance training program started, after the 4th week, and shortly after the 8th week of training. To ensure adequate protein intake, subjects were required to consume 24 grams of whey protein immediately after each workout. There were no significant differences between the groups in total calorie intakes. Both groups consumed approximately the same amount of calories each day. Likewise, there were no significant differences between the two groups for protein intake. Supposedly, I mean, according to these dietary recall things, which we know are not super accurate, but anyway. So here were the measured variables. So first of all, they took DEXA scans, and they assessed muscle soreness by way of a 1 to 10 rating. It's because of the hypothesis that if you are less sore from your weight room workouts, you'll be more able and willing to engage in other forms of exercise, for example, cardio, on other days of the week, which will contribute to an overall greater energy deficit, which will lead to greater fat loss over time. So that's why they wanted to assess muscle soreness as well. However, they did not actually prescribe any additional exercise or anything like that. But if we look on the left here, we can see the results from the DEXA. So in terms of body fat, the full body program group lost 1.7 pounds on average over the course of the 8 weeks. And the split group, they actually gained some body fat, so 0.66 of a pound. And when it comes to muscle mass, both groups gained muscle. However, the full body program gained slightly more by 0.2 of a pound. So their conclusion was that this indicates that the full body routine resulted in a more significant decrease in fat mass compared to the split body routine, highlighting a differential impact of the two training approaches on fat mass outcomes. While the set volume was the same for both groups, when the researchers calculated total lifting volume, so sets times reps times weight, they did report that the full body group's volume was 16% higher than the split body group. So, and again, maybe not accounting for some of the warm-up sets, etc., that we mentioned, or the activation as well. So they did do more reps on average. The premise is that you want to prescribe a resistance training program that is not only effective for muscle building or building muscle, but one that also limits the amount of muscle soreness, obviously. The rationale for this is that if you are less sore from your resistance training workouts, you will be more likely to engage in other modes of exercise, cardio, power production, or even more resistance training volume. over the course of the day or just in general. So the strengths of this study they named was that it was experienced athletes, a high rate of adherence, hardly any dropouts, and that they used the DEXA scan. However, obviously a big limitation being that they did not actually control for the nutrition. So as we also know, you know, fat mass does easily pile on if we're not monitoring the nutrition. Maybe a lot, or is a lot more variable through nutrition than just training alone. So again, for me personally, I do think a lot of people do need some days or times between hitting a body part again. I personally have found it harder to create a mind-muscle connection if I'm only sticking with one muscle group or so for one exercise. And my thought was also that perhaps when we are tracking the steps with our clients, etc., we can make sure that they're still at least getting somewhat of the same NEAT in, regardless of NEAT or like walking, etc., regardless of their training program or soreness status. Because of course, if we are in a calorie deficit, if we're training for a show or whatever, we are going to be sore at some point, and we are naturally going to want to move less. So perhaps with continuing to monitor that, we can kind of keep a little bit of an eye on that. But yeah, what were your guys' overall thoughts when reading the review at first?
I was curious why they chose like highly experienced and trained people to participate, and wondering what the difference would be, because applying the findings of this to the clients that we work with, they're not the same people. So in general, I'm not working with people who've been training for 8 years and bench press their body weight. So I wonder how different it would look given like a regular general population group of people.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. I guess the benefit in my eyes from of using more experienced athletes would be, you know, newbie gains in comparison, because of course, and if we use people that have never resistance trained or even just in the first year, we can assume that they're going to gain muscle with pretty much anything. But yeah, nonetheless, I definitely get what you're saying.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Any other thoughts?
I appreciated the practicality of it. Like when they did take into account some subjective things like soreness. I mean, that's highly subjective. And I think the overarching message I got from it is that, you know, the mental side of it, you know, it really does matter. Like you can design an optimal program or say this is the most optimal, but it's not necessarily optimal if you can't stick to it. If you're so beat up that you don't want to go do your workout tomorrow or whatnot, then it's not optimal anymore. So I appreciated that part of it, and that's what I took away from it.
Yeah, that's really such a good point in terms of adherence. I mean, like, again, even just in this group, if we all had to follow the same program, most of us would hate it. And maybe one or two people would love it, and vice versa. It's yeah, it's interesting.
One of my thoughts, and I'm not sure if I missed it or not, was with the full body, are they doing supersets, right? Because that can actually increase your heart rate, which can over time, right? So again, I don't know if I missed that. But also
I don't think that they were doing supersets, but I definitely get what you're saying. I think they still had the 1.5 minute rests between sets, but yeah, nonetheless,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, so that was just one of the thoughts that popped in.
Mike or Melissa, any other additional thoughts?
Not really, not anything new, but I just wanted to echo Annie's point about, you know, the most effective training program is the one that's going to get done and the one that can be done consistently. And so ultimately, if someone hates doing full body and they're not consistent with it, then it's probably not going to be effective in fat loss. But if someone can be consistent with it, then it's going to be effective in fat loss. Consistency is the key. So whatever helps people achieve that.
Yes, exactly. Preaching. For sure.
I agree with Mike. I did like it, and of course, since I like full body splits. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. And also in my course with Menno, he also likes full body splits. He thinks it allows for higher volume because body is not as fatigued, the body part is not as fatigued. So you are usually doing more reps because you're more fresh. So he says it actually leads to more hypertrophy. Therefore, he recommends to design full body programs for all the clients that accept it.
Okay, interesting. Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm wondering if anybody has recently come over any research or whatever that they found interesting and thought we should read here, or just in general topics. I know at the beginning of the year we kind of said like, hey, what do you guys want to read about in this year? And we talked about some menopause stuff and of course some of the other things we have read, but is there anything that comes to mind should be looking into over the next few weeks? No.
I think it would be nice to do some deep dive into the Ozempic craze.
Ozempic? Okay. Yep. That's, I mean,
Like-
that could be kind of like opening up you know, when you start pulling on a yarn and then it turns into
I watched recently a YouTube video by Menno. I think it was like 12 minutes. Luca, yeah, boy. Sorry, I have my boy here showing me a drawing that he just did. So, sí, ahora no, momento. Back to different language. So in his video, he explained a little bit of what it is, where it came from, what it means for the industry, when it's recommended, like a little bit of a wrap up, and then we could have a discussion on what do you think about it. We can even just play the video at the beginning. I think it's 10 minutes or something like this, and then what are our opinions about it, or we can search a paper about it. But I think it is important.
Good idea. Yeah, thank you. I'll put it on the list of things to discuss at some point. Any other suggestions?
I'll think on it. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. No.
So, sorry, time delay. There was a study I was meaning to read, which I saw popped up on Brad Schoenfeld's Instagram a little while ago, which was it was his 2019 paper on stimuli and sensors that initiate muscle growth. I don't know if that's a study that you've done or covered at all before.
Can you repeat the title? I don't think so either.
Sorry. So the first author is Wackeridge. So Wackerahage, and the first name is Henning, and then it's stimuli and sensors that initiate skeletal muscle hypertrophy following resistance exercise.
Stimuli and sensors.
And sensors that initiate skeletal muscle hypertrophy following resistance exercise.
Okay, cool.
And it was, I think, the reason why I was interested in it is because I think it was quite a seminal paper on what stimulates muscle growth. And I think he was saying that even though it was done a little while ago in 2019, it's still very, very relevant to what, you know, we think causes hypertrophy now. But it could be quite dry, so I apologize if we do
I'll look into it. I mean,
it.
in either case, I'm just putting together a list, so we've got plenty of weeks to think about things. Thank you, though. Annie, you were going to say something.
Oh no, I just was going to say that I'll kind of think on it too, and
yeah, anytime or even anytime something pops up on Instagram or so where you have an article that you're interested in, feel free to put it in the WhatsApp group or so also. Awesome. Any other?
Yes. So now sorry, I can talk.
Hello.
So what I would be interested in would be like recovery, like what is, I don't know, maybe there's an article, I didn't specifically read anything, but what like what to do with, like how to recover quicker, or especially when you do strength training and cardio, like in a week, like cardio and then another day strength training and then cardio. And so what is the recommendations for recovery and how to recover faster, or what are specific or maybe new things, especially what is there to recover quicker or faster, or what are new things they figured out or studies shown? Yeah, I think that would be interesting.
Awesome. Okay, I think we can all benefit from that.
For that one, for Julia, there is one of the podcasts of the series of Andy Galpin with Andrew Huberman.
Oh yeah, I
There is
can forward
one
that to her.
of these
Yes.
gigantic podcasts that is like a lesson of 3.5 hours that is recovery.
Oh wow, cool.
Yeah, I'll forward it to her. It's a really good one. But yeah, I'll
Perfect.
still
Yeah.
look for some studies as well.
Yeah, just if nothing needs to.
I think it's interesting, and the good thing about the podcast is that it is a bit more digested than if you just read the paper, and they also
cool.
have references in the podcast, so we could check one of those references.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for your time. Hope you have a nice rest of your afternoon or evening.
You too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.